let's get rockin'. Oh, whoops. Ha! Not start B. Enjoy. Entrusted with the ring, Frodo was tasked to bring it to Elrond in Rivendell. But first, Frodo would need to exit the Shire, and to do that he would need a key from old Gaffer. Remembering a story Pippin once told about stealing old Gaffer's glasses and hiding them in the Hobbiton caves to the west, Frodo decided he would go and try and find them, hoping that Gaffer would relinquish a key in exchange. The caves of Hobbiton were vast and teeming with bats, but there was a place that they used to play as children, and Frodo knew that that must be where Pippin had hid the glasses. Frodo laughed as he seemingly intentionally took these hits from the bats. How funny it is that he did not try to avoid them. Frodo had often wondered who had lit the braziers in these caves so often. He was nearly at the place of which they had played as kids. He could almost feel that the glasses would be there. And Frodo was correct. But upon retrieving the glasses, he was attacked by bats. Frodo panicked and passed out. He found himself waking outside of his home in Hobbiton. Had it all been a dream? He had thought as much, but then looking into his hand, he had noticed he was still clutching Gaffer's glasses. How odd it was, but he must continue his journey. Retrieving Sam, Frodo headed to give Gaffer back her glasses. Old Gaffer was pleased and gladly provided Frodo with a key to the Shire. Up ahead, the crossroads to Bree were teeming with black-cloaked riders. The hobbits thought it safer to head south through the forests of the Shire. Though the forests were beautiful, Sam spotted a wolf's den to the west. They would have to be careful so as not to become lunch. Up ahead, Frodo had noticed something strange in the clearing. A bottle of Shire juice had laid there, left haplessly by some unknown person. The wolves were upon Sam. They must make haste. They had decided to stop to eat some mushrooms to regain their strength. Strangely, Frodo felt a little more life experience by doing so. Frodo thought it would be best to hone his skills with the dagger on the wolves of the Shire woods before continuing on his dangerous journey. The hobbits were very fond of mushrooms and had found them plentiful in the woods. But now they would need to strengthen their skills for the road ahead. The tracking skills of the wolves were beyond all comprehension. But Frodo felt stronger the more and more he pursued them. He knew moving at this time would be ideal, but decided to get a little stronger for safety. Frodo now felt comfortable enough to move on with his quest. But upon reaching Farmer Maggot's, the hobbits were set upon by orcs. Frodo knew that this was the only place he could potentially be killed on his quest and had to be careful. But all was good. Sadly, in the fight, Sam had been slain by the orcs. Frodo was very grieved by this, but had no time to mourn his friend. After speaking with Farmer Maggot, Frodo discovered that she would be willing to help in exchange for returning the jug of honey from Ted Sandyman. He would need to move back through the woods and locate Ted. Up ahead, Frodo had spotted the drunkard Ted Sandyman intoxicatingly walking the woods. Frodo decided that perhaps the bottle of Shire juice would loosen his tongue regarding the honey. And he was right. Ted had told Frodo that he had lost the honey outside of Farmer Maggot's, somewhere in the woods. Frodo once again felt stronger by consuming the mushrooms. There, surrounded by a pack of wolves, relentless, vicious wolves, Frodo had found the honey and quickly hasted back to Farmer Maggot. Farmer Maggot was pleased to be given back her honey and provided Frodo with an oar and a note for the ferryman. As Frodo walked through the woods, a strange and beautiful music played in his head. Frodo had come to the banks of the River Brandywine and would provide the ferryman with Maggot's note. It seems that the ferryman had not properly read the note, so Frodo showed it to him again. With oar in hand, Frodo was ready to cross the river. The woods of the Shire continued on in their vastness, but a new danger had appeared. Orcs who were never before in these woods have now been seen roaming. But what was their purpose? Frodo decided it best to slay a few orcs along the way so as not to be bothered by them as he attempted to move through the woods. It was strange to see elves so far from their home, but as Frodo moved into the homestead ahead, he had noticed Merry standing outside. This had made him very happy at the loss of his friend to see a new, friendly face. After stopping to eat some more mushrooms, Frodo found himself at his peak physical condition and was ready to move on with his journey. In the woods ahead, Merry had spotted some smoke in the distance, and the smell of mushroom stew filled the air. The orcs began to swarm around Frodo, and he fled in terror. They could see the glow of a campfire ahead and knew they were almost at safety. They had discovered an elf camping in the woods. The elf had provided them with a key to Bree, but upon leaving the elf's camp, Merry was attacked by an orc. And though Frodo wanted to jump to his aid, before he could, a strange voice whispered, "Leave him." And to Frodo's surprise, he did. Though he had just lost another friend, Frodo seemed somewhat less saddened by this. Frodo was coming to the borders of the Shire, but he had to be wary. He had heard tales of an old willow tree that liked to gobble up unsuspecting hobbits who drew too close. Up ahead he spotted the old willow and knew he should stay clear. Leaving the woods, Frodo found himself in the Barrow Downs. The long branching caves of the Barrows went on seemingly endlessly, and the crypts of old dead kings and the armies that served them still lingered. burrow cave seemed to go on and on and on and on. And as Frodo moved through them, he began to despair. The smell of death was strong and he could barely take it. Just as Frodo thought that he was lost, he had noticed a small light. At last he was out, back into the heavy fog of the barrows. The fog was thick and laid heavily upon Frodo's body. His lungs burned with every gasp that he took. As he moved his way through the open fields and began to feel lost, he had heard the whisper again, beckoning him towards the rock. Behind the rock, Frodo discovered a passage leading further into the barrows. Barrow wights bared down upon him, yet seemed to be strangely afraid of the light of the braziers. Perhaps Frodo could use this to his advantage. Deep, dark pits littered the room. Frodo thought it best to stay clear of the edge. Odd sculptures adorned the walls, filled with a mysterious green liquid. Frodo was very off-put at the way that the strange ooze illuminated the rooms with an eerie glow. Frodo found himself out of the caves once more and into the rolling hills and plateaus of the Barrow Downs. Moving on, a strong wind blew in from the west, taking with it the fog. Frodo was finally able to take a breath of clean, crisp air, and he felt some respite. But that comfort was quickly cut short as the fog rolled back in. Ahead, Frodo had heard the shouting of orcs, and had thought it best to avoid them. As Frodo pressed on, he was attacked once more by the Barrow wights. He quickly fled, seeking shelter. In the distance, he spotted a cave and made his way towards it. Inside the cave, he had once again heard the whisper, spurring him on, but what had once seemed strange and eerie had now become warm and comforting. inside the tomb, Frodo had found a key. It seems this strange voice was leading him out of the barrows. As he had expected, the wights had gone. He was now free to move further with his quest. Yet the orcs did not give up. Once again the mist had rolled out with the wind, yet Frodo no longer found it comforting. He had missed the solace of the mist shroud. Once again he had heard the voice beckon him to a nearby cave. Though the barrow wights once bothered him, they no longer seemed to be interested in attacking him. They almost seemed to want to follow him. Yet the bats were still surely jerks. Though his friends had died, this no longer seemed to bother Frodo. He had found a new friend in the darkness, a true friend in the darkness. Frodo enjoyed taking the hits. It only made him stronger. Strangely, the orcs too seemed to be losing interest. And once more the guiding voice resounded in his head, leading him to the rock in front. Frodo had spotted some moss ahead. He knew he would require it for his journey. Somewhere in the deep depths of these caves, something had changed inside of Frodo. Where once the desire to return the ring to Rivendell and complete his quest had been, a new thought had emerged, dark thoughts placed there by the Whispers. Frodo would instead claim the power of the ring as his own. He would travel to Mordor and take on the throne and become the new Dark Lord, claiming the armies of Sauron for himself. Once again in the fields of the Barrows, he knew he was close. Up ahead he could see the gate to the crossroads, and knew he was finally free to move on with his journey, his new quest, his quest for power. With Sam's love of gardening, Frodo knew of a plant whose milk of the stem was often sought after for its healing properties, but the leaves of this plant could be used to enslave the mind of the consumer and make them susceptible to suggestion. Frodo would collect this plant and use it to claim himself a champion, for hobbits were no fools. They know that their bodies are small and frail. Frodo would not be able to make the journey alone, and so he would require some muscle. On the banks of the river he had found what he was looking for, the athelas plant. Frodo carefully ground up the leaves into a powder, which he would use to ensnare the mind of his champion. He had encountered an orc in the forest, and quickly fled away back to the crossroads. Back at the crossroads, it was now time to enter Bree. As Gandalf suggested, inside Bree he would make his way to the Prancing Pony Inn. Only there he would find his champion. And standing outside the inn, there he was. Frodo threw the powder on the man. Okay, take a look at this password. Okay, cool. You got the password? We're going to reset the game. We're going to pop out of character for a second here, and I'm going to explain this glitch. So let's just pretend that, Mom called and she's like, we got to go to Grandma's house for the weekend. You were playing a game. You're like, damn, you got to turn it off. So we turn off the game. We got our password. And now weekend's over. We're back home. We're going to continue our game. Now I call this the GT password because it hello, that's not the letter. G. It begins with GT, and my moniker initials are GT, so that's kind of coincidental. But anyway, it's not actually the GT password because I'm supposed to be one level lower than I am ideally, but I got that extra level for safety. And anyway, these would slightly be different. But the key here is, hello, D, please. These letters move so fast. Memorizing this is part of the run. Anyway, so now these three spots correspond to Aragorn's character. Now, if I put these in, this is the actual order they were on the password. But if I put it in T to Z, something's going to happen. But if I put it in Z to T in the other order, or like in the same order but in the other sequence, something different would happen. So if I had put in those inputs in the other order, Aragorn would be despawned and the game would be soft-locked. But because I put them in the particular order I did, something really amazing happened, which I will explain subtly through the narration commentary. So, back to it. Frodo had claimed his champion and needed to continue on with his journey. They would first need to pass through Rivendell, however, to get to Mordor. As they passed the spot where Frodo had picked the Athelas, he snickered at the fate of Aragorn. They had come to the beginning of the Gardens of Rivendell and the famous Troll Shaws. There was a mysterious cave in the rock, but they had decided not to investigate. Up ahead they could see the outer gardens of Rivendell, and they were close. They had finally made it to the outer gardens of Rivendell. Yet strangely, the gates to Rivendell were open. Stranger still, Elrond, Gandalf, and Legolas were gone. They decided to speak with Boromir and Bilbo. Bilbo provided Frodo with the mithril armor and the sword Sting. Frodo now knew that he was untouchable. On the path ahead, they spotted a strange dwarf, but decided to pay him no mind. The outer gardens of Rivendell were vast and maze-like, but somehow Frodo knew the way. Using the horn of Boromir, Aragorn was able to freeze the trolls in their tracks. The sound of wolves' howls sounded in the air. Yet the wolves no longer provided any sort of challenge, and were thus ignored. Frodo got into position. No, you're standing in the wrong spot. Unfortunately, Frodo died. Very unfortunately, Frodo died. This was a very strange thing to Frodo. Though this was a small hiccup on their journey, it was not a big deal. Frodo was very surprised at Aragorn's ability to kill a wolf. They had found their way back into Rivendell, as if they had been there before. They once again saw the strange elf from the dream, dwarf from the dream. Frodo knew that his downward vertical thrust was his fastest act, and used it to quickly dispatch the troll. Frodo seemed to have found his rhythm and his final strengthening, the quickening. Once again the wolves howled, yet their sounds no longer made me laugh. Frodo slain the exceptionally powerful troll, and got his just revenge. They were drawing very near to Moria, and their adventure was nearly at an end. Up ahead, Frodo had spotted a wizard. Perhaps he was missing this orb. The wizard explained his name was Tim, and he would not let us pass without his orb. Our heroes had reached Moria, only to find the gate mysteriously open. Tales of requiring 5 jewels and particular scrolls did not matter, as the gates had seemingly been opened by some unknown force. The mines of Moria were very, very, very vast. Very vast. And one could easily get lost within them. If only one had a map to follow. Inside the mines, orcs swarmed all over. They would need to make their way through to the exit before something terrible had happened. Frodo's lack of concentration had led him in the wrong direction. Very wrong direction. They would have to go right at the crossroads. There were sounds of drums in the deep. Ahead, they had discovered a mysterious scroll. Perhaps this scroll could be used somewhere else. Perhaps to advance them through the Moria dungeon. Returning to the crossroads, they decided to head south. Though there was not much danger, Frodo knew that they must be careful, for falling here would bring them back to the crossroads. Fortunately, with Sting in hand in the mithril armor, Frodo was more than enough match for anything. So upon retrieving the key, they decided to head back to the other direction and see what they could find. Stepping out of character, the narrator decided to use this time to explain a few things. For the reason that the gates to Moria were open was due to the password glitch. This and many other key doors happened to disappear upon doing so. The key opened the door and they were able to move forward. With all these orcs around, Frodo was now glad to have Merry and Sam not around, slowing him down, lagging his journey. Frodo thought it best to be safe and have Aragorn use the Horn of Boromir, for the trolls did not seem to be as friendly as the orcs. They had discovered another key and moved on with their adventure. Frodo was more than content killing things along the way. His thirst for blood and power had grown strong. The mines of Moria were so massive and vast and maze-like that it seemed as if it would take them 30 minutes just to get through it all. They decided to try the zigzag doors and see if that boasted any more benefit. The strange key they found seemed to help them progress further. What horrors awaited them in this next section of the mines? mines were confusing. Frodo and Aragorn had gotten slightly lost. The strange magical barrier seemed to dissolve when reading the scroll, and they were open to proceed. Moving further and further into the mines, they had wondered if they would ever see the exit. Though they had come to a dead end, luckily they had found a key, no doubt to be used further in the mines. It seems whoever had designed these tunnels did not want you to get through with ease. Strange gargoyle-like statuettes adorned the corners and walls of the mines. They decided to try this series of doors straight ahead. And luckily enough, the key had worked. But alas, a map was forced upon us. Our heroes knew that if they had gone and collected everything they needed and created the fellowship that they were supposed to, their journey would have taken at least 5-6 hours. Though it had seemed that the orcs wished to be part of Frodo's fellowship. As they blindly followed. Once again, they decided to take the zigzag doors. They had a feeling that this next section would be extremely expansive. Though it seemed as if they'd been here before, the numerous mimicked corridors and hallways all resembled each other and made for an extremely confusing time. But no matter, they pressed on. Though Frodo had considered enslaving the mind of the elf Legolas, he knew that he could not draw his bow properly. And so he was left behind. They were getting very near to the end of their journey. Very near. Though that they felt the estimated time was about 1 hour and 30, our heroes knew that they would get there in roughly 12 to 13 minutes. Backtracking, they decided to check doors on a corridor previously unexplored. The long journey and late hour had made Frodo tired, and his thoughts were not completely accurate. Collecting another seemingly magical scroll, they continued further into the mines. Back through the series of doors they pressed on. Though the snakes attempted to attack Frodo, Frodo made quick work of them and devoured them. The words of the magic scroll of Oin dissolved the barrier, and they were free to press forward. Our heroes had almost gotten lost in the darkness, but quickly refound their way. Another series of winding stairs brought them to a room, another dead end, but another dead end with another key. Frodo attacked the snakes relentlessly, but they were too quick. Aragorn felt a strong chill up his skirt as he was not wearing any pants. Frodo's anticipation grew as he knew soon they would be out of these mines and one step closer to his power. Key in hand, they pressed on to the next area of the mines, drawing ever so close to the end. The seemingly rainbow assortment of orcs was pleasing to the eyes. An unexpected variety in the darkness. They had entered what seemed to be an orcs' meeting. Claiming one more key, they were that much closer to their goal. Roughly 5 minutes closer to their goal. Once again, a map had been forced upon them. Yet Frodo took the time to read it, so as not to get lost. This was in fact the way they wanted to take. Frodo remembered Gandalf once speaking tales of an ancient demon that lived within the mines of Moria. They had hoped that they did not encounter it. They had come to another dead end, but had discovered a strange book. Happening upon another magical barrier, they attempted a passage from the book. As such, the barrier dissolved. The excitement had grown within Frodo. He could feel it. Though the journey was long and arduous, they were very close, mere minutes away from escaping the mines. They had retrieved what Frodo felt in his heart to be the final key. All thoughts of the Shire and his friends, all thoughts of Tom Bombadil, all thoughts of Ted Sandyman and Maggot, they had all dissolved. Frodo was now consumed with one singular purpose, the drawing of the ring, and calling to answer that call, and be victorious. In the darkness, they could hear the drums sounding louder. Doom! Doom! They could feel a strong presence ahead. Frodo knew this evil. He knew it must be what Gandalf had spoken of. He positioned Aragorn in a way so as to take advantage of the Balrog. His timing would have to be very precise if he wanted to make quick work of the Balrog. For he knew this ancient demon had quite a bit of health, quite a bit of vitality. But he was no match for the cunning mind of the Hobbit. With that, the Balrog's body turned into ash and molten rock, and they were able to continue on. Calling from the ring, a loud voice resounded. Gigi! Gigi! Thank you everyone for bearing with. I know it was a struggle, I know. But here we are. We've made it. This is the end. So, just a couple interesting facts on some of the tech here. I got to the end of the game without picking up Aragorn once, and if you do not have Aragorn, this scene will not trigger, the ending will not trigger, and you will be soft locked in this area, which just infinitely cycles. None of these trees or the bushes have any actual, like, physical anything to them. You can walk right through them all. And voila, they just kind of have this little conversation. And they had come to the elven, the elven lady Galadriel. And Galadriel would show Frodo his true destiny. All those people long forgotten of the Shire. None of this mattered to Frodo anymore. Frodo had one singular calling: to return the ring to Mordor.